There came a point when you were living this life where I think you had an insight into potentially the downside of being, in the family you were in and in the life you were in. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about, that night that you got called in to kind of explain the amount of money you were making, because I know you were getting kind of well known. And I think the press was reporting how much money you were making, or people were talking about how you had become big time. And I think your own family was starting to think you might be hiding money from them. And they called you in for a sit down, which, you learned a lot from that. And I know it was a big moment in your life. And maybe you could frame that story for us and tell us what happened and what you learned.
Yeah, and it's kind of common in that life, Brian. People are always looking at you, and there are power struggles, and people get things in their head. I was making a lot of money, and there was a report in the media that I was getting powerful enough to break away from the Colombos and start my own family. It was a fictionalized story. There was no basis of fact or truth in it at all. But things like get into people's heads, and I had the Russians with me. I had a big crew. I had my own jet plane. I had a helicopter. I had a lot going on, bringing in millions. So, people start to, hey, what's really going on with this guy? So, one of the horrors of that life, and I have to say that, is that, you make a mistake, people are upset with you. Your best friend walks you into a room, you don't walk out again. And that is a horrible part of that life. So I got that call one night, and, it was a tough situation because I kind of knew what was going on. Some guys in, the hierarchy of our family, I was a captain at that time. They started questioning some of my Russian, relationships, and the Russians came back to me and told me, and there was kind of a little bit uneasiness on the street. So when I got this call, I was concerned. I mean, I thought I could have walked into that room and not walked out again. The setup was not good. It was bad. And, it was more of, obviously, I don't want to say I fought back, but I held my own. I said, hey, why are you believing these kind of things? We went back and forth. At the end of it, everything was great. I got a hug, have a glass of wine, and all this kind of stuff. But it was a tense situation for me, and it put something in my head, and this was 2 years before I actually walked away, but I never forgot it. I said, man, because, my father was out on parole at that point, and he didn't stand up for me the way he should have. And that was a kind of crushing blow for me. I didn't do anything about it. I didn't even talk to him about it, because in that life, you learn to keep a lot inside. You don't want to discuss things. And but it did have an impact on me. And later on, it figured into my decision to walk away. Because I said, man, if your own guys are not trusting you, and, your father even, what do we have here? And I thought of it that way. But yeah, I was one of the younger guys. So, some of the old timers, they naturally resent the younger guys, especially if you're doing well, making money, you got position. And, so you have to deal with that. I mean, I guess it's the same in life, except that the consequences aren't as severe as it could be in a mob life. But, when you're a younger guy and you're doing well, some of the old timers, they resent you. And I had to deal with that.
Because there was rumors you were making like $2 billion, and they were thinking you were maybe pocketing it. And like you said, all the other bosses or all the other captains, they're not making what you're making. So yeah, that's a tricky situation that you have to deal with when they bring you in. And I think one of your best friends kind of drove you to that meeting, and you talk about making that walk from the car to the basement of that house or wherever you went, and not knowing what was going to happen. And that was, I think, one of the longest walks of your life.
No, it was scary, Brian. I mean, I remember it vividly now. When I talk about that, I can remember it was a night in August, so it was warm, and I can remember the little firebugs, we used to call them, lighting up, and I remember I can smell the flowers, and I can just hear the crickets. I mean, it becomes very vivid, because when you think you're going to go, man, everything becomes very sharp, your senses. And I always say, when I was walking, it was about a 30-yard walk from the car to the basement apartment I had to go in. And I can tell you, I don't know how, my knees were weak. It was a tough experience, because when that door opened, I didn't know if, boom, that was going to be the last thing I saw. But somehow I held my own. I didn't faint. But it was scary, and I don't mind telling anybody, it's a scary situation. And people say to me, Michael, why didn't you cut and run? Why didn't you just run away? And I said, I don't know. It wasn't a macho thing. It was just kind of robotic. I just said, well, if this is it, this is it. You get into that mindset. I was so much a product of that life. I said, well, if this is it, this is it. And crazy. I mean, I know it's crazy to think that way, but that's how I dealt with it.
And you asked your buddy later, I think you said to him, why didn't you say something to me? And what did he say to you?
I said, I got mad at him because he was a good friend. I knew him well. And I said, you didn't prepare me. You didn't tell me what was going on. And he looked he said, well, Micah, was the other way around. Would you have told me? And I said, no. He said, well, that's the light we lead. You know it as well as anyone. You grew up in it. You know it as better than anybody else. And he was right. He was right.
Wow. And I think it was him that later told you that your father didn't stand up for you in that meeting. And I know you didn't talk to your father about that, but did you ever speak to your father about that?
Brian, yeah, my dad, rather than defend me, because my dad had juice, defend me, he just said, hey, I don't know if my son is doing that, making money. I don't know. He does everything. I don't do anything. I'm on parole. So he kind of took the high road and he didn't defend me. And that really hurt. I mean, it really, really hurt. I never said a word to him, but when I was writing my first book, I was really laboring as to whether to put that in the book, but it was so significant for me that I said, you know what, I have to. So I put it in my book because if that incident didn't happen and my dad, would have defended me, I don't think I would have walked away from the life. So that had such an impact on me because I said, man, if my dad and I are so close and I know there's a deep love there, but if this life can separate me and my dad, what do we really have? So it had such an impact on me that I felt I had to write it in the book. And he read it in the book and he called me and he said, what is this stuff you're writing? I said, well, Dad, I had to write it. I said, it's true. He said, well, Jimmy was lying to you. I said, I don't believe he was lying to me, Dad. I think it was true. I said, I know the circumstances. I know the setup. I was there. I said, and I believe it's the truth, but it's okay. I said, I don't love you any less. I said, as a matter of fact, you probably did me a favor because look where I am now. So, but he denied, because my dad always told me one thing also. He said, never admit to anything, deny it forever. So, he's kind of a victim of his own teachings to me. So I knew it happened, and that's the life, Brian. It's sad, but true.
The strange thing is that probably saved your life.
I believe so, because I really mean it. Even though, I met my wife, she had an impact on me and all these things happened. I don't think I could have ever turned my back on that life because I knew it would have hurt my father tremendously had that not happened. And I really mean that. And I've gone over that many, many times in my mind. But I said, man, if this happened once, could it happen again? Could the next time it really be over for me? I can't even trust my dad in that regard. Not that my dad, and I want to be clear. I don't think my dad would ever pull the trigger on me or anything like that. But, sometimes omission is just as bad as commission. It could be just as devastating. And that day, it was omission on his part that hurt me.
Yeah, and you're probably on a knife edge that night where every ounce could have helped, for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And, my father knew that I was doing the right thing there. I mean, I wasn't doing anything wrong. And look, when I brought this into the family, this was my deal. I took all the risk. It was all my guys. Nobody else, we were putting in trouble as far as made guys or the family. So, it was my deal that I turned over to them as far as money was concerned. So, and they were happy about it. Don't get me wrong. I mean, it made me rise in the ranks but there is a story, somebody read it on a platform just a couple of weeks ago that I was worth $20 billion at that time in 1980s. Who was worth $20 billion in 1980? I mean, it was ridiculous, but that's how the media inflates things. The government inflates things. I mean, there was no truth to that. I mean, I was doing pretty well, but $20 billion, I don't think Bill Gates was doing that in the 80s. I mean, it's crazy.